Good Friday evening and welcome to Two Way Tonight. I'm your tour guide, Mark Halperin, walking you through a variety of things and eager to tell everybody what's happening. A lot is happening. A lot is happening, and I'm gonna walk you through a bunch of stuff. We've got three great guests who are going to tell you about a bunch of stuff. I've never covered a story like this tariff story, at least not that I remember. There's just elements of this that are extraordinary. Um, One of which is the degree to which most elites, not all, but most elites think this is one of the dumbest things they've ever seen a president do. Maybe in some cases the dumbest, and the impacts of it immediately are quite striking, and in some cases quite negative. And the administration is sticking to its guns. A couple things. First of all, I wonder, whenever there's a story like this, when will this not be the lead story? Just everybody make your mental guess. It'll be the lead story today everywhere. Over the weekend, okay, there's no markets in the US, so will it be the lead story Saturday and Sunday? Certainly on the Sunday shows it will be, but will it be the lead story on newscasts around the country and national newscasts? Could be. I don't know. And then we get to Monday, everybody will be anxious to see what the markets do Monday. So in all likelihood, it will be the lead Monday. But you think about COVID, from the time COVID became the lead story, how many days was the lead? Signalgate, there's a sense in which this story could be like COVID. It could. Literally every day could be the lead story. And there are people in the administration who are counting on it not. And there are people both in Trump's orbit and analysts who are saying Trump should do something really big to try to get this off the front pages. I wonder how big it would have to be. If there was a natural disaster that killed a lot of people, to sound harsh, that could do it. I don't know what else could do it. If Taylor Swift announced she was getting married, maybe that could do it for some places. I'll continue to say this is a fascinating story. As a journalist, there's just so many moving pieces. The conflict between the elites and the Trump administration, fascinating story. There's also the story about people and real people. And one of the real joys I have and honors I have of the two-way community is I can talk to lots of Wall Street titans and CEOs and people in the administration and people on Capitol Hill, but I get so much communication from you all in the two-way community. And a story like this is invaluable to me. It's invaluable to understand how people are seeing what's going on. And I'm going to get to, when I'm told it's ready, a message I got just a little bit before we came on here from one of your colleagues, one of your fellow members of the community. Extremely striking to me. So I'm going to run through the news. We've got a bunch of sound bites I want to play for you. Amber Duke, Daily Callers here, Alex Castellanos, Matthew Bartlett. They'll all be here. We'll always, of course, point your questions. So if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're here on the two-way platform, if you're watching on X or YouTube, please don't put smack in the chat. Please remember peace, love, and understanding always. And listen, and if you hear something you disagree with, don't curse me out. Say, thank you, Mark, for bringing me something new. All right. Let's see. Where are we going to go first? Are you putting up that graphic right now? Is that why that's there? Maybe not. All right. CNBC front page, number one. All markets were down today. The Dow dropped 2,100 points. S&P loses 10% over the 2 days. And all the mood music and data in reaction to the tariffs today was as bad or worse than yesterday. Chinese coming back with retaliatory tariffs announced, and of course the Dow, and lots of action in the financial community, reports from different firms and analysts on social media, just cursing the administration and pointing out all the ways they think that this policy is not only going to be ineffective and not only ruinous, but that they're offended by what they see as the lack of intellectual underpinnings. Market close, number two from the Bonson Group, sponsors of this program. Dow, you see there, Dow down, S&P down, NASDAQ down, all in the red. President Trump, Truth Social, not so long ago, defiant. He's been on Truth Social a number of times today. Only the weak will fail! Exclamation point. Again, not backing down. Now I'm going to show you in a minute. Well, let's go to number 7. This is Chuck Schumer. The president chose to go play golf today, which, again, most presidents, their staff would say don't play golf on this day. Chuck Schumer tweets out this: Trump golfs in Florida as market plunges for second day. That's the Democrats' message. Either party would do that, no surprise. All right. There's not much other news. Let me just tell you about other news, and we're going to come back to tariffs and again bring our guests in. Um, uh, Contrary to the vice president saying yesterday on Fox News Channel that there'd be no need for a TikTok extension because they had a deal. The president today announced 75-day extension, which is a pretty long extension. And of course, people question the legality of the first extension, but nobody's going to stop them. Congress is going to probably not do anything. So the TikTok deal is not yet done, and I doubt it will be done until we get to the end of the 75. And a federal judge ordered that Maryland man who'd been deported under questionable circumstances about his alleged criminal past. The judge said the government's got to go get him and bring him back here. We'll see if they do that. Is that graphic ready yet? No. You'll tell me when it is. Okay.
It's ready.
It's ready. Okay, here it is. So this is an email I got from one of you not that long ago. Mark, I feel like I'm missing something with these tariffs. How can one president unilaterally destroy an economy with no checks and balances? Is Congress unable to stop this financial nightmare, or are they just too weak and unwilling to challenge him? I can't imagine looking at my 401k. We'll come back to address some of this person's questions, but that's the sentiment I heard from so many people today, whether they're super wealthy or not, whether they're super connected to politics or not, whether they're elite, whatever that is, or not. This person is not connected to politics, and this person expressing the sentiments, I'll say again, as I often do here, tens of millions of people agree with this. They're so confused. And whether they're just reacting, you can take that down, whether they're just reacting to the media and Wall Street's framing of what this policy is, how dangerous it is and how destructive it is, or they've reached their own conclusion. I don't know. Our colleague, Paul Wilkie, this morning shared with me something. I should have made it into a graphic, but I'll explain it to you. He's got the thing on Amazon where you don't buy it, but you put it in your basket, right, to maybe buy later. And he had like 10 things in there. And this morning on the morning meeting, we said, well, they're not going to be inflation for 30 or 60 days. Every item in his buy later basket said, no, this thing used to be $60. Now it's $80. This thing used to be $120. Now it's $170. And whoa, like, I don't know, go into your basket, see if that's happened. Whoa, I say, if all over the country, people are buying stuff on Amazon and the prices have gone up, and there were significant price increases in a lot of the cases. It wasn't $12. It was significant as a absolute dollar amount and as a percentage of the original purchase price. If that's happening, I believe the market pressure is not as intense for members of Congress. And I would think for the president, as layoffs and as inflation like that, like snap inflation coming on like that, like the Biden inflation ramped up over a period of time. If we're seeing that level of inflation right that way and it stays, wow. The chairman of the Fed today spoke out and said that he said kind of in a sober and somber way, that inflation, that the Trump tariffs were going to be a real problem for the economy, almost certainly. Play that soundbite, please.
A highly uncertain outlook with elevated risks of both higher unemployment and higher inflation. The new administration is in the process of implementing substantial policy changes in 4 distinct areas: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. Our monetary policy stance is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties we face as we gain a better understanding of the policy changes and their likely effects on the economy. It is not our role to comment on those policies. Rather, we make an assessment of their likely effects, observe the behavior of the economy, and set monetary policy in a way that best achieves our dual mandate goals. We have stressed that it will be very difficult to assess the likely economic effects of higher tariffs until there is greater certainty about the details, such as what will be tariffed, at what level, and for what duration, and the extent of any retaliation from our trading partners. While uncertainty remains elevated, it is now becoming clear that tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. The size and duration of these effects remains uncertain. While tariffs are highly likely to generate at least
okay, that's the one I wanted you to hear. He said higher inflation and slower growth. If you're still awake, if Chairman Powell did not put you to sleep, the president said on social media, whereas Chairman Powell is adhering to the norms and conventions that the Fed chair doesn't comment in detail on executive branch policy, the president went on social media and said the guy can redeem himself for his failure to react quickly enough before, and he should cut interest rates. Again, I go back to the person who sent me that email today. Like, these elite policymakers need to be more engaged. And again, I'm going to show you some administration officials defending the plan, but there's just this gap between what Wall Street is saying and what the White House is saying, and at least what some, not all, but some real people are saying what the White House is saying. So let's bring in our three folks and ask you guys just to start at. I'm going to play the sound bites for you because I want to hear your reaction to them. Amber, and then Alex, and then Matthew. Just give me like your 80,000-foot view of where are we on this tariff thing, how the markets are reacting, how the world's reacting, and how the White House is standing firm. Amber.
Well, I don't think it's a surprise to see the movement in the markets. The stock market obviously likes predictability, they like stability, and this is a really aggressive policy, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad policy. And I think really we have to look at where the American economy is at today. After the past 3 decades, we've seen a hollowing out of the middle class, consistent wage stagnation. We have seen manufacturing be moved overseas, and Trump seems to be the only political leader in recent history to actually want to address this problem in a real and substantial way. When you have an entire class of people, meaning the working and middle class, who, for whatever reason, are not capable of working in the service economy or don't want to work in the service economy, then you have to address the fact that those people are not able to have gainful, purposeful, meaning-filled employment, or if they do have that employment, they're not able to make a good living wage. And outside of the economic concerns, I think the other big point on tariffs is national security. There are a lot of key industries like lumber, timber, automobiles, steel, microchip manufacturing, that it is critically important the United States be able to manufacture themselves. We saw this during COVID. In 2020, China had a lock on the PPE and pharmaceutical market, and they choked off their trade partners so that they could hoard those resources during a pandemic that they caused, by the way. And so the United States has both an economic and national security interest in making sure that some manufacturing, if not most of it, is reshored to the United States. And for people who come from these working class communities, who have seen the people laid off consistently, who have seen people's wages not go up for the past 10, 15 years, who have seen the drug epidemic, the suicide epidemic in these communities, for me, this policy might be difficult in the short term, but it's a no-brainer for restoring the American economy to its excellence.
Amber, again, you speak for tens of millions, and thank you for doing it so eloquently. What would you say to the person who wrote me that email, who says, how can a president unilaterally destroy my 401k?
That to yours truly?
Amber, what would you say to that person?
Well, hopefully you're not taking all of your money out today at once. Obviously, it's not ideal for people who are close to retirement or in retirement for this to happen. I think if we put this in context, the stock market suffered a lot of significant dips, both in 2020 during the height of the pandemic, and then in 2022 following Biden's inflationary actions through Congress with the IRA and Build Back Better type legislation. So this is not out of the ordinary. I think also putting in context that the stock market is still up significantly from where it was in 2022, even with the drop of the past 2 days. And I think markets are going to correct once business leaders figure out how to respond to this policy. We've already seen a lot of American-based companies announce that they are going to make massive investments in the American workforce. That's a good movement. We've also seen some countries, by the way, respond by saying that they're planning to drop their tariffs down to zero, whether that's Israel, Vietnam, Canada, to name a few. The EU has expressed a willingness to negotiate with Trump.
Yep, sorry about that. I'm not sure where that audio came from. I should say, and I go to Alex, a bunch of the White House put out 2 long press releases that we're not going to show you because they're so long, saying here's all the people who love the tariffs, and here's all the great things that happened in the administration today, not just on the economic front. Alex, are you as bullish on this as Amber is, as a matter of both policy and determination, as the White House is showing?
Well, I'm certainly bullish on the policy.
Maybe I can hear you better now.
Sorry about that. We'll find that. We'll mute him. Go ahead.
I think America has been hollowed out.
Yes, sir.
I think unless someone does makes an effort, like Trump is making, to
Sri Lanka is where they make most.
That's right. I agree. To rebuild the middle class, it's just not going to happen. So, however, I think we were talking yesterday, there's a reason restaurants don't give you the bill before they give you the meal. And that's because very few of us would go out to dinner. And tariffs, unfortunately, work that way. You pay the cost in short-term inflation of prices, perhaps shortages, before you see the longer-term benefits, which I think Amber mentioned. To me, part of this is not, the Betamax was a superior product to the VHS machine. The VHS machine won the battle. Of course, neither's around now. But the point being right is not necessarily mean you're going to be politically successful. I think that's a war that has to be waged on its own merits. And I think one of the things that the Trump administration might consider is saying, look, I'm going to give the 180 nations of the world that are going to be affected by this, I'm going to give them 3 months to come to terms with this, or they're going to be in the worst possible position. But I think the uncertainty of this is separate from the cost of the policy, is what freezes economies and causes depressions. So I think if you need uncertainty to bargain, then put a limit on it and establish a date by which certainty will occur.
Matthew is here to talk about New Hampshire, where he's from and spent some time. We want to do that. We'll do it later in the show. But Matthew,
by the way, one more thing. Mark,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I checked my basket in Amazon.
Yeah.
Cigars are unaffected.
Unaffected. That's good to hear. Matthew, what do you think of what's going on with the tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, largely agree with a lot of what Amber said and what Alex just said, and that is palpable, and that has been present for a long time. But being a Granite Stater, being a cranky Yankee, I'm a bit contrarian on that. America's always been an opportunity, a place where no matter, there's nothing special about the American people, because by definition, we are a mix of the world's people. My relatives were not successful in Greece. They came here and they were successful. Why? Low tax thresholds, not a lot of, trade barriers. And I do worry, $100 bills do not lie on the ground for long in America. If you innovate, if you build a better or cheaper product, you win the day in America. So it is somewhat concerning, to now have this potential reordering, not just of the domestic, but global economy, where the government is going to be supporting industries which may not be globally competitive in today's world. We're not looking to bring back blockbuster video. We're not looking to bring back, the horseshoe industry went away a long time ago. I'm here in New Hampshire. We have mills in Manchester named after the textile mills of England. Yet those jobs went down south a long, long time ago. We're not looking to get that back. We do have high-tech manufacturing now that is in part tied to the global economy. So there certainly should be some concern as you approach this. With that said, there's about an equal chance of success as there is failure.
Okay, let's do this, barring some breaking news during the program. I'm going to show you bits of 3 Trump spokespeople, Rick Grinnell, Stephen Miller, Scott Bessent. We'll dump out of them. I just want to give you a flavor of sort of how they're defending what's going on. And then you guys, I want 3 of you to comment on the spokespeople. And then I want to get to your questions, because there's lots of hands up, and I know people have a lot of questions about what's going on. So let's just roll first, number 4, Rick Grinnell.
Know that this is a system that needs to be fixed. Every politician before Donald Trump has complained about the system and done nothing to fix it. We can't tinker. We've got to go in and fix it. And so I'm confident when I see what's happening on the other side from countries who are saying, okay, we're going to be more fair. Let's have a free trade agreement. Imagine, Charles, in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and we have the majority of countries around the world with a free trade agreement with the United States of America. People are going to say Donald Trump was a genius. I should have bought back then.
Number 5, Stephen Miller.
Thrown around the R word, and they see the Dow down 2,100 points, and people are worried about a recession. They're worried that we can't do this without sending this economy into such a deep dive that we can't come back from it. And I know you guys are all about growth. I know you're about lowering taxes, rolling back regulations, and seeing that growth. Are you concerned that this is going to put us into a recession?
The exact opposite. We inherited from Joe Biden an economy in total free fall. There has been zero jobs growth for American workers in 4 years. In other words, all jobs growth had gone to foreign workers. That is a depression, not a recession. That is a depression for the American worker. We had debt and deficits that were rising unsustainably that would lead us into a certain debt and deficit crisis. We had inflation that was...
Okay, let's jump out of this and go to Scott Bessent, number 6, please.
What do companies want to do? As President Trump said yesterday, best way to get around the tariffs, build your factory here.
Yeah.
And what can we do here at Treasury to help that? We're pushing to get the tax bill done so we can guarantee the low taxes, full depreciation within the first year. We're working with Secretaries Burgum and Wright on energy security, and we're working on getting the regulations down. The president, I don't know whether he talked about it yesterday or the day before, Taiwan Semi, largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world, Lee Zeldin, the EPA commissioner, is working to push through all the permits that they need because we've just gone into this regulatory morass where it takes so long to get things done in this country. So I think what will be more interesting are the individual company announcements more than the country announcements.
Amber, again, I thought you were very articulate in explaining the policy, so I give you lots of status to judge how you think those three gentlemen did in defending the policy. Oops, sorry, Amber's. You did unmute and just, I'd love your appraisal of how the three of them did.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought fairly well. And one thing that really caught my ear was Stephen Miller talking about the job creation under the Biden administration going to foreign workers. That's 100% correct. Whenever Biden had a jobs report that met expectations, you actually dug into the numbers and you saw 100,000 jobs lost for American workers, 100,000 gained or 150,000 gained for foreign workers. That's not a healthy way to have a national economy. And I would also point out for progressive friends across the aisle, there's been a lot of chatter over the years about income inequality. The fact that the rich are getting richer and middle class wages have stagnated. There's basically two ways you can solve that problem. And I do think it's a problem, by the way, which is sort of contrary to some of my aggressively free market conservative counterparts. It's not good for social cohesion, causes a lot of disunity, a lot of mistrust among the classes. There's two ways to solve that problem. One of them is to tax the rich and redistribute to the poor or the middle class. They're dependent on government at that point. The second is to institute a policy like the one Trump just has with tariffs and try to actually reshore a lot of manufacturing jobs, good American jobs where people are getting paid fair wages under good labor protections and not outsourcing all of that labor to third world countries because companies get away with it on the cheap. I much prefer the latter option. I think that's no secret.
Alex, how did the very well calibrated and sensitive ears of yours hear those three gentlemen defending the policy?
What did you say? Oh, just kidding. I thought they were defending the wrong argument. I think they're all right in what they were saying, but that's not the concern you raised at the beginning of the program. You said the price of things is going up, and I don't think they addressed that. Yeah, it's great to bring back jobs. Yes, we're being hollowed out. Yes. Nobody has addressed a problem that we've all acknowledged for years, but the pain is immediate. And how are we going to deal with that? Now, look, we actually do pay money to get things and things we use over the long run. People are willing to invest for longer term results, but you got to explain that. You got to be honest about it. You got to look in their faces and say, guys, we're going to go to war. And in war, things hurt. But this is a war we can't afford to lose. It's a war for the future. It's a war for working people. It's a war for families. It's a war so your kids will have a better shot. So I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I think all people see is Donald Trump trying to eat the whole elephant in one bite. And it scares them. Scares
And
them
Alex,
out of it.
this may be. Yeah, go ahead.
But I don't think Trump has an alternative. I think he has to eat the elephant at one bite. We've sent people to Washington for years to try to slowly eat the elephant, and the elephant stomped them flat. So I get what he's doing, but I think the communication has to be a call to arms, and I think less uncertainty is better.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about that and bring Matthew in. So go back to this thing with the use of signal, really about the only administration figure who said this was a mistake, it shouldn't happen again, uncharacteristically, was Donald Trump. The rest of them all said no problem. On tariffs, the only person I can think of who has said there's going to be some short-term pain is Donald Trump, although he's not saying it now, but he did say it along the way. Just, Alex, again, you might think this is a moronic question, but why do you think they need to say that? Because otherwise people won't take them credibly?
Yes, the law of the ketchup stain. When you walk into a room with a ketchup stain on your shirt and you want to talk to people and deliver a message, nobody hears a damn word you say unless you go, everybody's looking. Does he know? Maybe he doesn't know. Should I tell him? I don't know. Until you say, oh my God, look, I got a ketchup stain. And believe it, great hamburger. Now let's talk. Then you got people's attention. Donald, everybody's looking at the ketchup stain right now. Prices are going up. This is hurting. And instead, the administration is saying, but in the long term, it's good. And, be real. There's too much information out. When you tell people something they already know, you don't lose ground. You gain authenticity.
So, Alex, what should they say to people who are retired or near retirement about their 401ks to make sure that ketchup stain problem is eliminated? Sorry?
No, hang with me for just a little bit, and you're going to see you're going to see the greatest period of growth you've ever seen, and it's not going to take as long as people think. Hang with me for just a bit, and not only will you benefit, but your kids and your grandkids are going to do well. So hang tough, but I need you to man up, America. Cowboy the fuck up, America. This matters.
Matthew, thoughts on the three spokespeople and how they did?
Again, mixed messaging. Is this a ploy to ultimately get free trade? Okay, that sounds wonderful. Or is this no? This is a new way of the entire economy and global world order, and deficit reduction, per Lutnick, and replacement of the income tax. It seems to be all over the place. If I'm being generous, I've heard a lot of this, over the years from people like Michael Moore. And if I'm being somewhat nasty, this almost sounds like economic Heaven's Gate. You know what I mean? We got to do these crazy things, but we're going to make it to the other side of the comet. Just trust me. And the notion of, listen, there's going to be pain, but it'll all work out in the long run. That sounds like the justification of communism. Communism's going to work out in the long run. So it's just very, very frothy. And it's certainly counterintuitive to at least what conservatives have meant for a long time, and maybe many Americans have meant for a long time. It's, this promise of a happy ending. We're going to have a big flood, and then there's going to be a rainbow at the end. Sounds great. And again, I'm not trying to be overly dismissive. I recognize there are, as Amber said, some legitimate national security implications around this, and especially with China. But again, a lot of this sounds like a big, big roll of the dice.
All right, really.
Point out that well-known communist, John F. Kennedy, said we do these things not because they're easy, but because they are hard. The American people will man up for big things, but part of not including them in the story is they don't get to participate in a great purpose. They don't get to become valuable. You can't lead people unless you bring them with you and give them a role.
All right, I want to bring folks in. We're going to do one quick game show style question. It doesn't relate to tariffs. Hand over your buzzers, you three. Buzz when you want to guess the answer. Which administration official, according to the Wall Street Journal, will be in charge of direct U.S. Iran nuclear talks if they occur? Which administration official will be spearheading that effort? Anybody want to guess? J.D. Vance, wrong. You got to buzz though. You got to go. Bzz, bzz.
Buzz. Wickoff?
Amber.
I was going to
is,
guess Wickoff.
Wickoff is correct, but Amber buzzed first. But
That's
Matt,
okay. We'll
Matt
share
just
the
jumped in.
credit.
Wickoff,
Mine was not in the form of a question.
Busy, exactly. Busy guy. Not enough to do Israel and the Middle East and Gaza and the Russia Ukraine. Busy guy. All right, bring folks in again. Tell us as always where you are after you unmute and what's on your mind. And we begin tonight with Michael Santos. Michael, welcome in.
Thanks. So my father was the mayor of my hometown, and at one point in time, several Chinese companies reached out to him, and they were interested in building factories in the U.S. And my dad was incredulous. He said, "But you guys have all that cheap labor. Why do you want to come over here?" And the reason was some products can't be built with cheap labor. Some products need a skilled hand.
Yep.
And the problem with Trump's tariffs is just blowing this stuff up across the board. You're not thinking smartly. What you want to do is target the industries that you want to bring back here, the high-paying industries, the industries that take skill. And if that happens, it would be a good thing. The other thing I'd like to say is, you know, what's the old saying? If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. We have experience with tariffs. McKinley's run in office. He put on a bunch of tariffs, and I guess I didn't realize this until recently, created one of the worst depressions, second only to the Great Depression of the 30s. The Depression of the 30s was aggravated by the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. So we know what tariffs do. Now, if you want to target it, like to the steel industry during Trump's first term, or to certain industries, that's one thing. But just this across the board tariffs is crazy. And we're even putting tariffs on countries that we have a positive trade surplus with. They're buying more of our goods than we're selling them.
Michael, where was your dad a mayor?
Northern California, little town called San Leandro.
And is that where you live now?
Yeah. My family's been there since 1948, immigrated from Hawaii.
Wow. Amber, question for Michael.
A question for Michael?
If you have one.
Yeah, absolutely. So what ended up happening with the Chinese companies that wanted to come in?
There were some small investments, but one of the problems was not having the facilities that they needed. They tried to put together some real estate transactions to get a big enough project, and that was always difficult. So this thing about coming in and building facilities, it's complicated. You need to have the land, you need to have the property before you can do that. And also, I'd like to disagree with you, Amber, on jobs and the availability. I work in the construction business right now, and there's a ton of high-paying jobs that they can't fill. Union carpenters, union plumbers, union HVAC folks. These folks are making six figures, all the overtime you want. So there are plenty of high-paying jobs if you go outside of your comfort level. You're not going to sit in a factory. We happen to have the Tesla plant here. That plant pays like $17 to $20 an hour for horrendous jobs. The turnover there is just unreal because injuries and the fact that it's just not worth it to folks to go there and build cars for $20 an hour. It's not the union jobs of Michigan. So there are jobs out there if you get off and go look for them and go hunt them down.
Yeah,
Alex,
I hear.
Go ahead, Amber. Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that. My dad was actually a union plumber, so I hear what you're saying. And I think one of the other policies that has been making its way through the Republican Party, through people like Josh Hawley and even Trump over the past 5-10 years, has been one of encouraging young people to eschew a college degree in favor of going through trade programs. So absolutely, these tariff policies should be coupled with making sure that young people are getting the training and the skills that they need to fill those jobs.
Alex.
I appreciate Michael's on the ground view of how this works in real life. I would add to his understanding of tariffs that after World War II, when the entire world, Europe, Far East, was devastated, a generous nation called the United States let the entire world put tariffs on our products to rebuild their economies, their manufacturing economies, their agricultural economies. We said, you don't have to buy American products. You can build your own manufacturing bases until you catch up. And guess what? The kids have grown up. they have caught up. The tariffs worked. It protected them. And you'll notice today that China is not sitting there saying, you know, I watch CNN, and CNN said the only people paying the cost of these tariffs are the Americans. So why don't they put more tariffs on us? This is great. That's not exactly happening. So I will say that on occasion, tariffs
Lose
do
Alex audio.
rebuild a manufacturing base.
Yeah.
If I can respond to Alex there, I mean, that's a great example about after World War II. But if you look at the history of the United States has a history of going into undeveloped countries, pillaging them for their minerals, and then manufacturing stuff and then selling it back to them at a higher price. So we haven't always had this two-way street where we're the nice guys.
Yeah, Michael, you're being very intellectual about this, which is great. Are you emotionally upset about the tariffs? Is it angering you or scaring you, or?
No, it's just frustrating. Like I said, you're doomed to repeat history if you don't understand it.
Are you a Trump? Are you a Trump voter?
Never. In fact, the closest I ever came to supporting a Republican was John McCain. I would have voted for John McCain, but then he went and got Sarah Palin as his running mate, and that was it. That was end of story for voting for a Republican.
All right, Michael, thanks for being part of Two Way. Grateful to you for coming in. Greg, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
I'm in the bourbon capital of the world, Bardstown, Kentucky.
That's a good place to be.
Yes.
The price of bourbon's probably going to go up.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be some consequences for bourbon with the tariffs.
Yes, sir. Tell us what's on your mind, and thank you for joining.
Well, the first thing on my mind, I want to show Alex. Can you see this?
Three Uses of the Knife. Yes, indeed, David Mamet.
A wonderful book that I got from your recommendation. So thank you very much. And
That's
I would
awesome.
recommend it to others. I would like to offer some more perspective here on pricing in the markets. I've not heard anybody talking about commodities. If you look at commodities today and yesterday, the energy markets were down, agricultural markets were down, interest rates are down. And I'd like to come back to that idea after if I can explain a little bit. I'm from originally grew up in a place called Ashland, Kentucky. And I graduated in 1969. And Ashland was probably at its peak then. I graduated from high school, went to work at Labor Reserve at Armco Steel. We also had a refinery there, and it was the home office to Ashland Oil, which at the time was the largest publicly traded company home-based in Kentucky. And it was a middle-class community. We had some rich people, few. We had some poor people, but it was majority middle-class people. Somebody like my dad, a pipe fitter, and my mother, a clerk, could pay for their house, pay for the car, help me with my $300 tuition into community college, my first semester. And I was lucky. I got out. I'm financially well off. Everything's good. I got a wonderful wife, wonderful family, so I'm doing good. But today in Ashland, the poverty rate's grown to 20%. The executive offices of Ashland Oil long gone. It's been merged and split. The Armco Steel Corporation, the two blast furnaces, there's nothing there. It's not that it's just closed. I mean, it's flat ground. So I'm from the community, and I have friends and relatives there that understand what has happened with the jobs that have left the country. And I really appreciate this platform, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. You know, other people get to hear all these opinions, and I think it's important. One reason probably that motivated me, I wish Dan was here. I have a lot of respect for Dan and Sean and Mark. But Dan's been saying this line about, you know, it's terrible about the 35%, but there's 65% that's had it really good. And from this side of the tracks, it doesn't go over too well. It sounds a little bit like, you know, let them eat cake. We like what we've got, and, it's great. And I thought, this is my way of expressing it. What if, a bunch of my friends went to Dan's home and we took his furniture, we took his TV, took his computer, took his clothes. We'd feel great. We got a bunch of good stuff. Dan might not feel so good. And we kind of look at it as there's a lot of elites and people that had it well that took our steel jobs, sent them overseas, took our furniture jobs, took them overseas. And I'm glad you all got your stuff, and again, I'm fine. I'm not complaining for me, but there's people who say, that's kind of tough. So I'll finish with this one little story. My favorite restaurant here in town is a place, it's Huddle House. And we know the waitresses and the people that work there. And one of our favorite waitresses, she, you learn about them, and she's telling us about how she's bought this rebuilt engine to put in her car. Now, I understand that the cost of a new Mercedes, maybe that's going to be $130 now instead of $100,000. But this lady, she's a mother, she's married, and she's just trying to scrape together her pennies to put into a rebuilt engine for her car to have some transportation. So on this side of the tracks, it looks a little different. I think lower commodity prices is going to help her more than I'm worried about the gentleman's 401k.
Yeah.
The lower energy prices is going to help her more than I worry about what the Dow did today. And we got through COVID and the Dow and the S&P, and we got through the financial crisis. And back in 73, we had a big bear market, and the market will go on. And people who have will continue to have, and I'm going to have probably more money a month or so from now when my stocks go up. But it's just a different point of view, and that's my piece.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Greg, thank you for that. I'd give you the whole hour if I felt I could cut everybody else off. Everybody loved listening to what you said. It's extremely wise and nuanced, and we're grateful to you for sharing it. Now, I wish Dan were here, because I think, with respect, I think you may have mischaracterized his point of view at least a little bit. But there are plenty of people who have the point of view you said. But I don't think it's Dan. But we'll let him respond maybe tomorrow morning or tomorrow night. But I don't want to speak for him. But at the same time, my sense is he disagreed with your characterization. I want to ask you a couple questions if I can. Are you a Trump supporter?
For this, and I've thought about this for months on how I might answer this question.
Yeah. Did you vote for Donald Trump once, twice, 3 times, or 0 times in the general election?
I first voted for George McGovern.
Yeah.
The last time I voted was for Donald Trump in 2016. And that is the last time I voted.
Okay. Because you haven't found choices you want to cast your vote for.
Because, and this may be a harsh statement, but I'm going to say it, I don't really believe we have a representative democracy.
Yeah.
And I say that, and I'll give you a simple example. You go back to December, continuing resolution, and the will of the people as expressed by their representatives was a mountain of new legislation and hundreds of billions of dollars in new spending. And then Elon Musk and others sit up on their social platforms, and by the end of the week, the will of the people, now expressed by the representatives, was no new legislation and no new hundreds of billions. And in my view, to use a term, Mark, that you used, there's a movement that I feel was a democratic movement that elected Donald Trump. And there's a separation now between democracy and representation. And to use a term, this movement is bringing about a bending of the knee of representatives to do more of what a majority of Americans choose rather than what the factions choose represented in our Congress.
Yes, sir. All right. Now, Greg, stay with us, because I'm breaking the format a little bit. We got 2 ladies whose initials happen to be the same. Both had their hands up. And for some reason, the tariff conversation draws more men usually than women. I'm not sure why that is, but here's Ann Sullivan and Alex Sullivan, no relation, both at A. Sullivans. So ladies, I'd love to hear you say where you are, say what you want to say, but if you've got a comment on Greg or a question for Greg, I'd love that. So Ann, you first. Tell us where you are and either what comment on Greg or say what you wish.
Okay, so I'm calling from Northern Virginia, and I'm a teacher, and I was kind of intrigued by Greg trying to present both sides of the tariff issue. I don't have a specific question about tariffs, but I just wanted to share. I taught kindergarten for many years in Northern Virginia, and I used to do a mock election every year with the kindergartners where they would vote for cat or dog. I did this for 10 years, and I had the same result every year, that there was one vote that broke the tie, and the side that lost, whether it was cat or dog, demanded a recount. And there were tears. And I've always, every time we have an election, I always think it's the cats and the dogs. You know, there's always going to be this, like, we'll never get beyond this. And I'm so grateful to you, Mark, for this platform, because I feel like this past election, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, correct me, but I felt like it was the first time that we didn't have the cats screaming and the dogs crying out unfair. And the kids would always, and these are 5-year-olds, so it's the perfect laboratory for human nature. And they would scream, "It's not fair, you need to count again and again," and recount. And so I kind of have always felt like, you know, you were talking about the beginning of the program, when are we going to stop talking about the tariffs? And I'm thinking, well, the cat people are upset. So, you know, this is, and then it'll be something else. And are we in this sort of this doom loop where we're just so polarized? And I don't know if tariffs is just another angle to this, but I definitely agree that I don't think we have a true democratic republic.
All right, Ann, thank you for that. Stay with it. Alex, I'd love for you to comment on what Ann said, Greg said, or anything you want after you tell people who don't know where you are.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on tariffs. So I think that mostly in regards to that first statement that you read about the person with the 401k. And what I do think people are missing in a lot of this discussion is the generational divide. So boomers didn't vote for Donald Trump. Like anyone at 65 or older voted the other way, like statistically wise. The younger generation is looking at the economy and saying, I'm definitely not going to get Social Security if we keep running this way. And I know I've had conversations with friends being like, if we're not getting Social Security, what are the odds they take our 401ks from us too in 30 years if we keep going this way? And so I think that the people that did elect Trump were electing him to do crazy things to disrupt the status quo and try something new, and have it not be socialism, have it not be price caps, and have it not be minimum wages, and try something different that is not the status quo, that is not socialism, that helps people under 40 in a different way. And, you know, I'm thinking of small business owners or private doctors that got kicked out of the medical system because of Obamacare kind of destroying what that looks like, and they don't have 401ks. And those are the people that voted this way, that wanted to see this disruption. And so a lot of the rhetoric coming from both the right and the left is definitely establishment rhetoric around it. And they might be very right. And we could face, you know, a depression and things go wrong. But at the rate we were going, we had 3 options. One was run ourselves into an economy that isn't working for the young. One was socialism. And the other is this. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. And I don't know, I'd love to get the panels.
Yep. Alex, awesome. Amber, comment on whatever you wish.
I think Alex nailed it. And I would also say to Greg, first of all, my husband's from Paducah, so love to see a Kentuckian chime in. But I think he spoke very eloquently of the reality for a lot of these communities where you know, you have sympathy for people who are in retirement and who are dealing with an unstable stock market. Absolutely. No one would ever cheer on someone's retirement not going well or feeling like they have to wait a couple of extra weeks or even months or a year to take out money at a better level of the stock market. But when have we ever had a discussion, sympathy, a realistic look at what's been happening to the union voters, the working class people, the manufacturers who left the Democratic Party and broke the blue wall in 2016 to vote for Donald Trump? I mean, all of this really goes back to the Trump revolution and the political realignment in 2015 and 2016, which is that you have an entire class of tens of millions of people who have not been spoken up for by their government for decades. And in fact, they've been doing the opposite, our elected officials, than what's in those people's best interest. And so I think it's well timed to reframe the conversation around the people who really are the engine of the American economy. And I mentioned earlier about income inequality. Why is that happening? It's happening because the large corporate owners, of course, make plenty of money by their manufacturing, which the salaries and wages are mostly going to foreign workers. What's happening to the dollar that is being earned by the American worker? It's purchasing goods that are coming from other countries outside of the few corporations that are headquartered in America. So how can you sustain an American economy when most of your money is going to either the top 1% or to a foreign economy and not being reinvested back into America? Those are really the conversations that I think our government officials should be having. And it's been ignored for way too long. As Alex said, Trump became so popular and won this past election because he is a disruptor. And disruption is not always comfortable. It's not always popular in the moment. It can be painful for Americans. But is it vital to protecting the American national interest in our workforce? I think so.
I just continue to say I've never seen a gap between elite opinion, most elite opinion, not all. Amber's elite. I know Amber will have mixed feelings about my saying that. I've never seen
That's okay.
I've never seen this dynamic of everybody on Wall Street, 98% of the people on Wall Street, and everybody.
If I may, Mark,
yes, ma'am.
you know, one of the issues with media is that it is so collected in the Northeast Corridor and in major metropolitan areas. The vast majority of people who work as journalists went to elite universities, and look, I'm part of that group. They're less likely to be religious than the average American. They are more likely to come from a white-collar family. I'm one of the rare people in the trade who comes from a blue-collar family. And I feel like I have to speak for these people because nobody else in the media is.
Yeah, and Amber, on this story, it's even worse because they're anti-Trump, they're pro-establishment, they all have 401ks, and they all talk to people on Wall Street who are guiding their sensibilities. So this is a case where the filter is so misleading. But what's not misleading is that email I read earlier from that person who is upset, and that's not an elite person. So Alex, go ahead.
Just a couple of quick points. One is that about the tariffs, and we often look at our political situation as if this issue, this policy, etc. But I think, and that includes free trade and fair trade. And we talk about it as if, well, the price of this is going up and this company is going to have to make something over here, not over there. But what we're seeing is a battle between governments now. It's not a company that makes things cheaper in China because of cheap labor. It is the industrial policy of China and other nations to take advantage of other countries, including ours, whether of our generosity or are the policies that we have. So do you fight back as a nation when other nations are in effect waging a form of economic war? The second point I'd make to Greg is that he said, let them eat cake. That sometimes the arguments against doing something for the middle class sound royal. I just wrote a piece a couple of days ago on my Twitter page called Let Them Eat Woke. And it's gotten about 800,000 views to my surprise. But the idea is that this is not just another chapter in the political saga. What we're seeing here is the end of an era. The era of FDR, the era of Lyndon Johnson, the era that government is going to pull us out of depressions and lead us forward and then solve all our problems. And that they're going to now be the only tool in our toolbox. What once was a great idea, perhaps, to pull us out of a depression, we need big government, has, like a lot of good ideas, eventually become businesses and then rackets.
Yeah.
That idea has become corrupt. And we're now in an age where big old top-down industrial age government means the people at the top don't listen to the people at the bottom, and they serve themselves before they serve us. And the whole Ronald Reagan joke, we're from the government, we're here to help you, is now the laugh line at the Democratic Party's wake because their idea died. We're from the government, we're here to help you. My point is something new is happening here. We are seeing a realignment. When Washington says we've got another solution that's just as good as our last one, people have a hard time believing it and not laughing. So something big is changing. And who's going to get there first, Democrats or Republicans? Are Democrats going to get more tools in their toolbox and maybe govern? Maybe we want more government, but maybe it's decentralized and local. Are Republicans going to be able to give up their positions among the elite establishment? So something big is changing.
Matthew.
Largely agree. And Alex, you're so right. I mean, what you said, the generational divide, thank you for pointing that out. Amber, what you said, totally. Alex, what you said, I would just put out there that, Joe Biden rethought monetary policy and blew up the budget with a bazooka. You know what I mean? If everything is free, nothing is affordable. I worry that rethinking this trade, we're talking about, this is the new reordering, and there's going to be a little bit of pain. Listen, if this came at the cost of Wall Street and Main Street benefited, I think that would be a success. But there's a very real possibility that this goes from Wall Street and crushes Main Street. And this could be the end of populist protectionist policies. If this doesn't go well, you know what I mean? There's going to be results here. And we're seeing maybe free trade. We're talking about Reagan and maybe term one about deregulation. Alex talked about the options that we had, going bankrupt, $36 trillion of debt, talked about socialism. Maybe, I grew up in the 90s, even though I'm a Republican, consider myself a conservative, there might be a third way, balancing the budget. Anybody talking about that? We're talking about Doge and wrecking bureaucracy. Yay, maybe, right? I'm all for think different, but not think dumb. It seems as if maybe the jury's out on Doge and how they went about. It seems as if that could be very true with these tariff policies as well. So again, hope for the best, equal parts right now of success, but there's also a notion of failure and what those ramifications would mean in terms of Main Street and politically. I worry that a lot of these things sound like, what did Alex say earlier? I worry that it is, we're Americans. We don't do things because they're easy. We do things because we thought they would be easy. And that's what I worry about.
Yeah.
I do think it matters that this is happening in conjunction with, or if Congress, bucks up and does their job, in conjunction of a second round of Trump tax cuts, as well as massive deregulation of the American business environment, and the unleashing of an American environmental energy renaissance. So I think those three factors that are happening alongside the tariffs are going to help prevent this from being overly inflationary, if inflationary at all.
Okay, Amber, thank you.
Alex Sullivan, how she got so good at multitasking.
Yeah, she's getting a lot done. Alex Sullivan, Alex Castellanos, and Matthew and Amber and Greg. Hope you'll come back regularly. I got a lot of questions for you that we didn't get a lot of time to. And Matthew was here to talk about New Hampshire, and we had Michael Graham here. We could have had the most definitive conversation about the New Hampshire Senate race of anyone in America, but we'll do that maybe next week, Matthew, if you'll come back. I apologize, but this is too important. There's so many questions and emotions and thoughts around this tariff thing, and so proud of this platform, this conversation, most of the conversations we've had all week. I've learned a ton. I've really enjoyed them, and we call these conversations like no other. And I think tonight was another example of that. So very grateful to you all. Maybe we'll see over the weekend if there's breaking news. I'll be watching basketball, and we'll be back Monday morning unless there's some big breaking news. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Grateful for everybody who participated today and this week. And again, particularly thanks to Matthew, Amber, and Alex for being part of it. And we'll, if nothing happens, we'll see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. with the morning meeting with Sean, Dan, Greg's favorite friend, Dan, and myself. Thank you all. Have a great night, great weekend.
Greg, good.